us tonight. The government review project that we will be sharing with you has had its roots in a 2018 effort where a committee of town meeting members were formed to review the government structure. That resulted in the recommendations to conduct an in-depth analysis of our government structure guided by experts, including the role of the town administrator, and to consider developing a charter. Burlington is a growing, family-oriented town with a critically important commercial sector. As time goes on, its governance needs to be more complex and call for a framework that is positioned to respond. With that as a background, the Select Board formed BGRC, the Burlington Government Review Committee, and is why we're here tonight. During our time with you, we will provide an overview of the Government Review Project and a preview of some potential recommendations, and most importantly, solicit your feedback and input. Before we get deeper into that, let me introduce you to our committee. They're actually sitting up front. I'm going to let you guess who's who. The Committee of Burlington, this is a committee of Burlington residents, has quite a diverse background, experience with government, professional focus, etc. We have members who have been lifelong residents of the town and members who have lived in town for just a few years. We have a lawyer, a financial executive, a few engineers, a video game developer, a CPA, a hydrogeologist, a journalist, an HR executive, a healthcare marketing executive, and a relatively recent college grad. This very dynamic group has met every 2 weeks since last June, which I just realized is a year. All of us were appointed by the Select Board with a defined mission: to ensure an appropriate, effective, and accountable organizational structure for Burlington town government, for its residents and constituents, and to recommend possible changes to the current structure and practices. To fulfill this mission, the Select Board asked us to develop a charter for the town, and to do so based on extensive research, including analyzing what we have today, as well as benchmark comparable communities. To look at the role, responsibilities, and the authority of the town administrator, to look at whether we should have provisions such as recall, to define clearly what should be left in the bylaws as they currently are, or moved into the charter. And at the end of the project, create a report that includes a charter and other proposed changes. They also made it clear that this needs to be a rigorous, inclusive, and open process where nothing is hidden. To do this, our approach has been to partner with the Collins Center from UMass, who have had considerable experience in leading communities through similar projects. We've followed a 10-step process that looks on the surface to be pretty straightforward, but when you actually dug into is anything from it. More specifically, the plan is to understand the current state, look at best practice, get input from our community, to develop a charter and routinely validate our findings through an iterative process. At the end, we'll develop and present a report and be transparent throughout this whole process. So, what's informed our discussions? With the Collins Center support, BGRC has reviewed our bylaws and special acts as they pertain to town government, structure, and practice. We established benchmark towns. Those are towns with similar populations, also are suburban in nature, have a select board and town meeting structure, and operate under a combination of special acts and bylaws. We've conducted interviews with stakeholders, which include town employees, town meeting members, board and committee members, and members of the business community as well. We also had a questionnaire at the January Civic Forum. The reports of these efforts can be found on our website, which if you haven't had a chance to take a look at, you might want to. People were very honest with their what they shared with us. It makes for interesting reading. We have begun the outreach activities as well, such as the survey which we just conducted, meetings with boards and committees, and tonight's community meeting. Although this is still a work in progress, we've learned a lot through this process. Let me take a minute and share with you some of the learnings from our interviews. People who work for and with the town have great pride in what they do. That said, we heard loud and clear that the town operates in silos. There is a lack of collaboration and communication between town departments and boards. It is actually personal relationships that get things done. Lines of authority are unclear, which leads to conflict and inefficiency. Policies for non-union employees are inconsistently applied so that you can have one person sitting across the street from another who follows different rules, which causes issues there. When it comes to town meeting, the committees defined by our bylaws need a complete review, with the potential of consolidation and in some cases elimination. So for example, we have a facilities committee, which actually doesn't exist. So we might want to consider either having one or eliminating it from the rules. Town meeting members need to attend all of the sessions and should not leave until the session is over. All of that said, overall the town does a pretty good job of representing our community's interests. The next step is to complete the analysis of the over 1,100 completed surveys in our recent effort, which we're really excited to say represent 11% of the households of the town. As a little aside, our consultant told us when we were doing this that we might get 3%. So Burlington, being the overachieving town that it is, stepped up on that one. To the analysis, we need to factor in what we learned from the numerous boards and committee meetings that we have and will be continuing to conduct over the next few weeks, as well as what we hear tonight into that process. Some have asked, what's a charter and why do we want one? Simply put, a charter is a constitution for our town. Today, our government is regulated by our bylaws, special acts, state law, policies and procedures, and in some cases, tradition. Some of which are outdated, and in some cases contradictory, and much of which can be difficult to understand as well as find. It's enough to make you dizzy. One way to help is to make this understandable, is to consolidate all of this into a charter. So here are the bylaws. Here are the special acts. Here's some state laws for you. And here's a charter. All of that will end up in this. Not all of it, but much of it. Much easier for us to actually read, understand, and find things. So what are the benefits? One of the most compelling reasons to have a charter for our residents is that it makes it easy to understand the structure and function of the town and how it operates, as it is mostly in, as I showed you, one place. We have the opportunity to write it in a way that is understandable for those of us without a law degree. In addition, it will be organized in a clear way so everybody can find what they're looking for. If you want to know what the moderator's term is, you will look in the index, see moderator, open it up, and guess what? The term will be right there. A charter also will clarify roles and responsibilities, which in itself will go a long way towards streamlining our decision-making process. Additionally, it can increase the transparency of town government to those we serve through requiring public reporting, ethics standards, financial controls, and clarify how the public can participate in the process. Lastly, and very important, and what we heard in our stakeholder interviews, the charter gives us the opportunity to reduce potential conflict by defining authority and clarifying roles and accountabilities for our government boards and officials. The general topic areas for a charter, chapters, if you will, can be found in these 8 sections. Excuse me. From the legislative branch to the executive, and then ending with the administrative organization. The committee will propose the structure, responsibilities, requirements, regulations, and accountabilities within each of these areas. To date, the committee has reviewed the areas in red, as you can see there, and we're about halfway through the 3rd financial procedures. Now, it may not look like a lot, but those are probably the most difficult discussions of the entire charter. And we have come up with a number of recommendations, which are included in the current draft of the charter, which if you go to the website, you will see. So as we go along and we amend the charter drafts, we are updating them every time on the website. So if people want to take a look at where we are, what it says, you can go through and read it and provide feedback, because you can actually send us an email and we'll respond to you if you do so. So where do we go from here? We will take the input that we have gathered through the town survey, incorporate what we hear from input sessions, and draft the proposed charter and other recommendations. We'll then go to town council for legal review. From there, we'll go finalize the charter and create a report. Then on to the select board for their review and approval. And from there to town meeting for our January town meeting to ask them to review and to approve the charter. Once we have those approvals, the charter will go to the legislature for approval and ultimately will end up on the governor's desk. Finally, after the process is complete and based on the recommendations from any of those parties, the charter may go to the voters for ratification. So if the select board in their deliberations said, we think we want this to go to the voters, that will go in with the recommendations. If the town meeting says that, it can go in with the recommendations, or it might be the legislature requires it, but it can happen at any point along that way. After a thorough review and much discussion, the committee decided that we would recommend that Burlington continue to have a representative town meeting with a select board structure. Once that decision was made, the first area of discussion was the legislative branch and town meeting. In that process, we plan to recommend the following: that there be no change in the number of representatives per precinct. We did an analysis of the number of people who ran for office for each of the elections over the past years and came up with the fact that these were competitive for the most part, and it made sense to keep it just the way it is. We have reaffirmed the responsibility, power, and authority vested in that body. Additionally, we have clarified the language that eliminates the very confusing bylaw language currently used for the timing of town meeting. As currently written, and I don't know if you've seen it, but what it says is, town meeting shall be a continuous body, but it may adjourn for periods not exceeding 150 days. Well, what that means is that town meeting meets 3 times a year: May, September, and January. So we're going to say just that. Although not in the charter, we will separately recommend that the town meeting handbook be updated and upgraded. Finally, we're recommending that the charter specify that the town meeting moderator have a term of 3 years, not 1. We are proposing to change the name of the Ways and Means Committee to the Finance Committee, a more common title for that committee, and one that actually says what it is, and to have the added benefit of being less confusing to residents. We're also discussing whether it makes sense for the Capital Budget Committee to be a subcommittee under the Finance Committee. Additionally, we'll recommend that town meeting committees be kept in the bylaws and not in the charter. So right now we have a number of committees that are appointed by the town moderator, and they work on projects and they have specific responsibilities. Those are the committees that we have found that there are some committees that are where we need to make sure we reaffirm their role and whether the committees can be consolidated or even if they're still needed. We had an extensive discussion about the referenda and voted to incorporate it into the charter as it stands today. Before I move on to the executive branch, let me see, I'm going to just stop for a minute and see if anybody has any questions or comments about the legislative branch. Yes.
Did you say that you're recommending one committee to fall under the purview of another committee?
Okay, so the question was, are we going to recommend that one committee fall under the purview of another committee?
Yeah.
Right. We are discussing that. That will not be in the charter, so it's not part of the charter, but we are going to be making some bylaw recommendations. We're still discussing whether that makes sense, and we have a meeting with both of those committees to discuss whether that makes sense from their perspective as well. So that's something that is still not resolved, and we're looking for input on.
Which were the two committees?
The Ways and Means, which we're going to propose we call Finance Committee, and then the Capital Budget Committee, which currently is a separate committee, but they do the same thing that the Finance Committee does. So what happens is that people who are presenting things have to go in and present to both of those committees using the same information, exact same information, but going to do it twice rather than doing it one time. So again, it's up for discussion, and we haven't come to any final recommendations on that front. Okay, Jeremy?
As you looked at the legislative and looked at town meeting, was there any thought on, I think you mentioned it earlier, on attendance and requirements to keep your seat with certain attendance rates, but also on the flip side, the ability to do remote? I know personally when I was a town meeting member, there were times where I could make the first two days.
Yeah, so for those of you who may not be able to hear it, the question about has there been any consideration of making recommendations about either remote participation for town meeting members or, what was the other?
About attending remotely.
Okay, yeah, that, okay. So as I think many people may know, town meeting did pass an article that would allow a certain percentage of members to participate remotely. The last I understand, and unless there's been an update, that the legislature is still looking at that, and I don't know that if it's been approved. If it's approved, then we can start doing it, but at the moment, it's sitting out there. So the committee has not really discussed that because it's already in our bylaws. It will go in the charter with the assumption that that has been approved. Okay.
I think there was a second question about attendance.
Yeah, overall attendance, is attendance eventually or at some point going to be evaluated as part of the requirement to maintain the town meeting members?
So a number of years ago, I think it was like 4 years ago, an article was presented to have a consequence for people not attending. And it went through some iterations, but where we ended up is that people that did not attend 50% or more of the sessions for town meeting did not automatically get on the ballot to run again. They have to actually go out and get more signatures, and they have to get the 10 signatures in order to get on the ballot, and they don't get the designation as a re-elected, or whatever the wording is, but thank you, incumbent. So that we did, and at the time, that was considered pretty radical. I do know that attendance is published, but I don't know that people go looking for it. And I'm assuming that people who run for office will probably campaign on the fact that they attended all the sessions, but the people who didn't probably are not going to mention it so much. But that is something that certainly we heard loud and clear in our interviews, that it's noticed, and the fact that people come and then leave early. And it was noticed and commented to me that there are certain people that you can look at your watch and say, okay, it's 5:10, they're going to be out the door in about 3 minutes, and there are people who actually leave. So I'm not sure what we do about that one, but it's not going to be in the charter. So, but it may be something that town meeting might want to take up, maybe the Rules Committee.
Follow-up question. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations as it relates to helping support attendance or people staying there throughout the night? Because I think that's the other part of tonight is, obviously we want all the questions for sure, but also would love to hear people's thoughts and
Yeah.
recommendations.
So,
Bring this over.
Yeah, there's another mic too.
And I'll pick up my mess while I'm doing that.
one of my thoughts is if town meetings happen 3 times a year, and it ends up being 3 nights usually, sometimes 2, you can see the attendance dropping off as the nights go on.
Right.
You can see people walk out as soon as an important vote happens. It's like you're there for one thing. And so if we could find a way to make sure that people vote, and to entice them, right? You need a carrot and a stick. You can't just say you didn't show up, that's no good. So maybe more frequent town meeting, maybe 4 or 6, so there's less of a commitment all at once, so people show up, and they show up for 1 or 2 days, they're not forced into that 3rd day. It might help attendance. And the other is, I know, and I don't know where it stands now, but a few years ago, when I was on town meeting, it was voted down to have electronic vote recording with buttons like some other towns do. We'd be able to see who was voting. We could see they stopped voting and walked out. You know, it would give some accountability, and we could see how they vote. I also know when I was on town meeting, I saw people vote, and when you had to stand up, when there was roll call, they changed their vote. I watched people in front of me change their vote. And so if we have more accountability and more open, honest communication, I think people may be more willing. And if we're meeting more often, so it's less of a commitment all at once, it may help.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments on that is there is a subcommittee on town meeting now looking at the electronic voting for town meetings. So there's a study group that has actually been formed to actually look at that. That is one option. And in terms of the other, that was something that we have discussed, and I think, you know, we'll make note of that, and then we'll continue to discuss that in terms of the recommendations. But I think that there's some recommendations maybe for the Rules Committee that will come out of this session. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anything else? Okay, you ready for the executive branch? Okay. We're going to recommend that the charter reflect the select board terms, number of members, and responsibilities stay as they currently are outlined by the bylaws. We looked at the competitive nature of this issue with comparable towns, and it seems like we're right in the sweet spot on that as well. There will be no proposed changes to the role elected boards play, but we will be proposing additional language for all committees that will assure that the number of members up for re-election is consistent. Right now, when it comes to filling, you know, having, when people's terms expire, the language that's used for each of the committees is different. So we're going to make that consistent. And the point is, we don't want any committees where everybody is expiring at the same time. So you want to have some sort of continuity on the committees. We're recommending that ethics standards currently outlined in the bylaws for just the planning board be applied to all elected boards and committees in the charter. Additionally, we're recommending that all elected boards and the town clerk remain elected, so no changes there either. Just as an aside, this afternoon we got the preliminary results from the community survey. And this area, it was universally felt that all the elected boards should stay elected boards. So this is one of the cases where, from our committee's perspective, we were going to recommend they all stay the same, and the town is now telling us they want them all to stay the same. So that's great when that aligns. What we're going to review now is the role of the town administrator. This is an area, oh, sorry, Barbara?
Quick question. Did you discuss the procedure for when someone leaves an elected board in mid-term? Thank you. I was just wondering if you had any discussions about the procedure for when someone leaves an elected board mid-term.
I think there's language in the charter
Yeah.
that covers, it's more general, I don't remember off the top of my head, but
The bylaws, it's.
I think it's outlined in there, and it'll make it more clear, because I know that's a topic we've looked at for sure.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure where we left that, but we did talk about it, and before, I will make sure I get the details on that.
And I'm not suggesting that it change. I think the language could be more clear than what it is now.
Yeah, clearly we are playing, there's a lot of parts of the bylaws where you have to read it like 8 times to really understand what it's saying. And we've been really, with the Collins Center, and you know, these are people who really know what they're doing, but they're also lawyers. So the committee has really pushed them a lot, like, okay, that's great, but how would you say it in English? You know, let's get down to it. We want to make sure that people can understand it. The other thing we're doing is we're also telling them that we don't want to get to the thing, and it says, as specified in MGL section 732, or please refer to this. If it's something that's going to be in the charter, we want to say what it is. If we may refer you back to a prior section of the charter if something is covered in 2 areas, but we're going to try not to send you off to the MGL land. I mean, that is not helpful, and to real people, they're not going to want to go looking that stuff up.
So I did find it quickly.
Okay.
In our draft charter, when Russ was looking through it, Article 3, Section 3.1, General Provisions, I
Yep.
believe.
Yep.
Filling in vacancies other than the select board, because select board has their own things. If there's a failure to elect, or if a vacancy occurs in any elected town office other than offices of select board, town clerk, or auditor, the select board shall fill the vacancy in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11. Vacancies for appointed positions shall be filled by the appointing authority for the office, board, commission, or committee.
So
It's a little legally.
I think maybe
It won't be all legally.
but I think what we're going to want to do is go back and take a look at that and make it clearer, because I think that is not as clear as it could be. So I think we'll make note of that. And thank you. That's why we're here. This is awesome. Thank you. All right. Now, yeah.
Any provision for like a recall of an elected official?
Well,
Those didn't hear.
that is something you'll see that is coming up, is coming out, is on our agenda to discuss coming up. We have not gotten there yet, but I have to tell you, originally, because this was introduced at town meeting, for many of you may recall, and it totally failed. I mean, not by a little bit. It totally failed. The survey we just got back, 80% of the survey participants think there should be a recall provision in this town. So as though originally, I think the committee thought, well, you know, town meeting already voted on this. This is probably something we're just going to not do for now. But now I think we need to actually go in and take a very deep dive on this. And when I say a deep dive, what that means is that the Collins Center puts together the comparable towns, what they're doing. We'll look at draft language, because some of them are, you can have language that, what does it take, how many signatures, what kind of time frame, what are the issues? Those are the kinds of things we need to get in and understand. So that is an agenda item for one of our coming meetings. So I would encourage you, if you're really interested in the whole idea of recall in Burlington, to keep an eye on the Agenda Center. And when you see that that's going to be on the agenda, you might want to dial in, and you can certainly voice your opinion at that time.
Okay, but what do you do then, probably 40 years ago, we had a problem with the town treasurer. I think he was taken out in handcuffs, if I remember correctly. So then how do you go about replacing somebody like that when it's an elected position?
So the question is, what happens if you have a problem with somebody who is in an elected position, and how do you deal with it if it's a recall situation? We're going to deal with those issues and get into the nuts and bolts, kind of what it is, when we get into that. So if it goes, in putting it in the charter, it will outline the process, what it takes, the procedure, and all that kind of thing will be in the charter. If we are going to recommend that, and I'm not saying we are or aren't, we haven't talked about it yet, but it's just, your question is very timely because we just got this, some of the preliminary results on the survey, and that particular item was kind of a surprise, I think, to all of us, because it was so, there were only a couple of dramatic things on the percentages, and that was one of them that came up. Anything else before I move on to the elected boards? Okay,
I'm just curious.
sure.
What are these comparative towns? Can you say what?
Sure, I'd be happy to, I just happen to have it right here. So we looked at population, so there's Dedham, we're about 25,000, right, 26. So Dedham's about 25,000, Milford, which is 30, Milton, 28, Reading, 25, Walpole, 25, and Winchester. So those are the comparable towns. Now, we don't limit ourselves to that because there are some other towns that are looking at things that we're looking at that may have had good experience or not. So recall, we just talked about that. There's one town that has put in a recall provision that turned out to have too low a threshold, and so it turned out to be a disaster. So we'll learn lessons like that from others. And this is the benefit of having the Collins Center, right? Because they know, they've done this, they've seen results, and when they put in provisions and they can see the consequence of some of those, and they're helping us guide through that. Did that answer your question? Good. Okay. Okay, now we're into the town administrator. We ready to go? Okay. So when it comes to the town administrator role, what we're recommending in large part documents what is happening today, which we learned from our interviews with the town administrator and other people who are involved in town government. In other areas, the charter will reflect new responsibilities. So let's get into it. First is we're recommending an employment contract. Right now, that is not what happens. Now it is indefinite terms set by the select board. This would now be required, and the town administrator would have their term, their compensation, and their conditions of employment, including annual performance reviews. That would be part of that. We are recommending that there would be townwide scope for budget, procurement, bylaw recommendations, and facilities, that it would extend to the whole town with some carve-outs for school department, school committee, and the housing authority as defined by statute. We're also going to recommend that there's a responsibility for coordination across elected boards and bodies. From a capital planning perspective, the town administrator would prepare a rolling 5-year capital plan working with the finance committee, and including this, which includes the school department, and that would be required annually. And we would officially designate the town administrator as the chief procurement officer, which he is at the moment the de facto, but it's not official. So this would make that official. From a financial perspective, we're recommending that the town administrator be responsible for the preparation of the annual budget for the town, except for the school department. Prepare the town-wide property inventory, which would include the schools, and prepares the annual financial and administrative report. From policy perspective, the town administrator would be responsible for preparing, implementing, and ensuring compliance with town human resource and finance policies, with the exception of the schools because they have their own. And however, would be responsible for the IT technology policies for the entire town. In addition, the town administrator would have the power to appoint or remove department heads, officers, and employees, except for the town accountant, treasurer collector, town council, and school committee. That said, the town administrator cannot appoint or remove staff serving elected boards without the elected board's prior majority approval. The last section defines a formal removal process, which has been added to both to protect the town as well as the town administrator. This outlines a process for removal which includes option for town administrator to request a public hearing and removes the 90-day notice severance requirement, as those terms would be outlined in the employment agreement. Finally, and importantly, in the unlikely event that the town administrator is suspended, an acting town administrator would be appointed so the town is not left in the lurch. Well, that's a lot, I know, but that's all we have. And now we're very interested in your thoughts and your questions. John, hi.
First off, you guys have done a lot of work. This is great. The thing I'm curious about, thank you. The thing I'm curious about, I think you mentioned at the beginning this would need to go through approval with both the select board and town meeting.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how that process would work. I assume it couldn't just be a straight yes or no to the whole package, because if you don't like something, you end up, someone would end up not liking something about it. So is there some idea of how it might undergo amendment or voting on parts of it, or
Yeah.
How would that whole approval process work?
So I kind of anticipated that question, so I did ask our friends at the Collins Center how that works. Basically, this will go to town meeting as the charter. Again, let's differentiate between the recommendations for the charter and the bylaws. The bylaws are just recommendations that the town meeting can either say, oh, that's a good idea. Whatever it is, those are to be dealt with later. That will not go to anybody, because we're not coming in with solutions. We're just saying, we've identified some issues that need some further research. The charter, however, we're presenting as a finished thing. So the way it works is that we would, now obviously there are going to be a lot of meetings between now and then, and we're going to get a lot of feedback, and we're going to try to incorporate that feedback into the charter to make sure that when we finally get there, that we think that it will pass town meeting. That's why, and I mentioned it's an iterative process. It is. And so it's our intent, so when we get to town meeting, it's got to be up or down. It's an up or down report on the whole thing, except for you can have an amendment on the floor of town meeting if there's a section that town meeting would like to have amended, just like any other thing that comes to town meeting. It's treated like a special act. So when you go to town meeting, if somebody has something that they want to amend on the fly, they can do it. It's our hope we don't do that, because by having meetings like this, after we get to the select board and we now know what the select board's approved and we start working with town meeting, our plan is to have many sessions with as many people as it takes to understand where the obstacles lie. And so that when we go in there, we can have a pretty good idea of whether we can make it fly.
Okay, and then in a related matter, something, and you did a lot of this in the presentation already, but it would be great to have, well, I'll call the equivalent of the change document. So if there was an enumerated list of, okay, all the collection of stuff we have now, here are the things that are materially being changed, like
Yep.
the moderator term, for
Yep.
instance, as opposed to just formatted or made more clear.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. As a matter of fact, Matt Denaro, right here, who's on our committee, is the keeper of the list, if you will. So we have a couple of Excel spreadsheets happening right now, and they are identifying the areas where we are recommending things that are changing from what exists today. Because when you take the bylaws, which are really hard to understand, hard to read or whatever, you're not really clear when you get into the charter. It's like, oh, well, this seems pretty straightforward. But what was it in the other document? And then you read it, it's hard to know whether they're the same or not. So we want to make sure that we're really out front saying, these are the things we're proposing in this document that will change. Everything else is really the same. It may be worded in a way that you understand it now. And that's part of it. Like you didn't understand before, now you've got questions because you understand it. But, so we're hoping that we can be not only transparent, that's a tough word, but we want to make sure that we are putting stuff out there and not letting people discover it. It's like, let's just tell you what it is and get your reaction and deal with it.
Great.
Barbara?
Thank you. Am I correct in understanding if this goes to town meeting just for a straight up and down vote? I understand that, but when it goes to select board, can select board make amendments at that time?
Yes. Yeah, yes, that's still in the work in progress, but they can suggest amendments. And then, but by the time they make their vote, then it's fine. And all of this is aiming towards January town meeting.
I understand. One last question. Does this deal at all with the school department, or is that completely separate?
That is completely separate. Let me back up. School department will be in the charter as it is currently in the bylaw. So there's certain things, especially when you get to schools, there are a lot of statutory stuff. So there will be a section about the school committee in there, but we are not touching it. It's a straight translation from bylaws into charter. Cindy?
The town meeting, are you approaching town meeting absences at all?
So the question is, are we going to talk about town meeting absences? That's a really good example of one of the things that might be a recommendation, has nothing to do with the charter. That's a bylaw or it's a town meeting issue that needs to be addressed. So, we may in our recommendations saying someone should address the town meeting absence issue, and we may recommend that the Rules Committee take that and put it on their agenda to deal with. But it will not be in the charter.
Because the other thing that you want to keep in mind with the charter versus our recommended report is that for the charter, these are things that hopefully make sense to be permanent for a decade. We're not looking to, because the process is so large and you have to get so many approvals to go through it. The idea is that the charter is something that we really want set in stone for a good amount of time. Things
Right.
that we might want to have some flexibility or test some things on how to drive more attendance or how to address absences. You want more of that flexibility to occur, and so that would be easier to change through bylaws than it would the charter.
Right.
I would hope so. 50 years ago, I had a baby during the big town meeting, so I missed all of that town meeting. And 12 years ago, my husband died in September. I missed all of that too. So that would reflect badly on me. But as you know, I have a good attendance record, but that looked bad at that point in time.
Yeah, I think the whole issue of town meeting attendance, we're hearing it loud and clear. We'll make sure that we make note of that. That is something we heard in the interviews. We've heard in discussions with people. It's an issue for town meeting, and Bill Byer unfortunately couldn't be here, but if you notice, he is actually on our committee. So this is something that we will make sure that comes into the non-charter kind of recommendations as well.
And sorry, if I might add one other thing. Also with the recommendations, it's not like we're going to go to town meeting with the charter recommendations and say, cool, have fun. As a part of it with the recommendations, there also will be a recommended next step to make sure that those recommendations actually get in place. We don't want to just then make some of these very important recommendations and then sit out there for another decade until there's another government review committee.
Yeah, one of the last things, and thanks Jess for reminding me, one of the last parts, if you looked at the different chapters, is transition. And in the transition section, that is what that's all about. How do we get from where we are today to the charter. So it would have things like, these are the following bylaws that we want to keep bylaws, but we think they need to be reviewed. That would go into the transition section. So we will absolutely identify the areas where we feel there needs to be follow-up. And if we have a recommendation as to who the likely body would be to do that follow-up, we might recommend that as well. Or we may just say, these are it, and it's going to be up to the town moderator and whomever to, I'm not sure who will say we're responsible for it, but we can make recommendations in the report, not in the charter, but it'll be in the report in terms of things that we've discovered along the way, because we've discovered a lot of things along the way here. Myrna?
Town meeting is my favorite subject, so if there's a vacancy in town meeting
Mhm.
and precincts have to get together before to fill that void, is that discussed in the warrant?
Is it going to be in the charter? Is that your question? Yes. Town meeting vacancies are in the charter.
Okay, so, you said something, and I hate correcting you because you know so much, and you're doing such a great job. But if a town meeting member is absent for 50% of their term, that's when they cannot run.
I think it says, the bylaw says sessions. I checked it, so I think, yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
There was one other question, but
Well, when it comes to you, you just raise your hand, I'll make sure we get it. Anything else? Yeah. Jen?
Just a quick question in regard to the sessions that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
If town meeting's 3 days and you're
Yeah.
only there for one, does that mean you attended the session?
You said, no, you attended one of three. That was in the bylaw, I actually wrote the bylaws, that's why I knew it. Okay, anything else? Yes? Oh, here. Yeah.
Hi, so,
Does that not work?
there it goes. No?
No, I think it's this one. Let me turn this one off. Maybe it's interfering. Try now.
Hello?
Yeah.
Mic check.
They can't both be on.
So a couple of things, you made a lot of recommendations, which I thought was great, and I also want to say that the committee, I think, is doing a great job. I love the meetings and watching you guys talk with all of the people and do those interviews. Very impressive work, and I think the town should recognize how much you guys are doing and how important this is for the town. I don't think a lot of people recognize how important what you're doing is for the town, so kudos to you. On those recommendations, there's a lot of questions that I have of why. I see the recommendations, not looking for them to be answered now, but in preparation for January, I think that a lot of the recommendations and the changes, we should put on the why. Okay, I recommend, moving from 1 year to 3 year because, or, anything along those lines. And there's a lot of great stuff here, just want to dive a little bit deeper into the why. Another point was on the similar towns or representative towns that we're looking at.
Yeah, comparable ones, yeah.
Comparable, thank you. It would almost be interesting, not just for similar size, but also kind of an aspirational town. And I get maybe that's where the Collins Center comes into play, but it would also be interesting to say like, oh, for towns that were like Burlington, either in terms of size or economy, and then they're going to places that we want to go to, what did they do? That would be a really interesting thing. I'm not saying that that's easy. That would actually probably be very difficult.
That was actually part of our discussion, actually, and how we actually came up with what we came up with, because we are really unique in terms of our commercial sector being such a high percentage of the tax base, in terms of the very family-oriented side of the other part of our community, and the fact that we have some really specific issues. So it's not as easy as saying, well, aspirationally, everybody, where do people want to be? I think it's like that's where we came in with the towns that we had, because nobody's gonna be just like us, but many of them are facing very similar challenges to what we are. And they also were in similar size, similar growth trajectory, similar government structure, because once we decided we didn't want to be a city, which was a discussion, and we wanted to be a select board and representative town meeting, then we wanted to see, we look at towns that had that same structure. So that was part of it, and we probably need to explain that in the process as well. The other thing, just on town moderator, because I didn't want to take, it's, how much information do you give in one of these sessions is kind of, so you wait for the questions, so I'm glad you asked it. The town moderator, so right now, the town moderator has to campaign every year for that position. Being a town moderator, you have to do training, you have to get certified, there's a lot to it. And it's not like you can just wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I'm gonna be town moderator. You have to really invest a lot in it. And when somebody's willing to put that kind of commitment in terms of taking courses and getting certified and doing all of that stuff, and it's only 1 year, it just doesn't feel right. The other thing we did is looked at different towns and what the terms were for all of our elected boards and committees, by the way, not just town moderator. But that was one of the criteria we looked at in our comparative analysis, and we found that it was, a number of them did the 3-year thing, so that's why we went in that direction. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Okay, and I got 2 more things.
Okay.
One is Jeremy's recommendation to look at the remote attendance.
Yep.
For those town meeting member meetings,
Yep.
town meetings, they can be very long. It gets pretty late. You can tell people's attention starts to fade. We were talking about people just leaving.
Yep.
At some point, it would be very interesting almost to look at, okay, what are the options in terms of remote attendance, and maybe almost flipping it. I'm not saying we should absolutely do this, but as a discussion of instead of less but really long meetings, maybe more meetings that are much shorter,
Yeah.
and you can really deep dive into a specific topic where people's attention span doesn't start to wane and people get tired and kind of all this.
Right.
There were some things where I was like, oh, I just wish that we had more time as a town
Right.
to discuss these and deep dive into them. And it's at a certain point you feel the energy in the room. It's like people are like, hurry up, we want to go home, we want to go to sleep. You just feel it, you just know it.
Yeah, there are 2 things there. One is we did look at more meetings. That was one of the discussion points that we had when we were talking about town meeting and how it met. So we took a look, again, in terms of town meetings, how frequently they have, and what happens to the attendance. And we did an analysis of our attendance by town meeting session. So we could see what was going on each session over the course of 5 years. So we did a pretty thorough analysis of that stuff. We determined that more meetings might be difficult, given the fact that everybody has a real job, has a life outside of town government. Not that my family realizes that about my life lately, but that is certainly something that that people have. So asking for, that kind of concentrated in time, if you spread it out, you will. There's a balance, like at some point you tip over and now you're going to lose people, so we wanted to make sure that we got to the sweet spot. The second is you can always have a special town meeting. Now, we have not done that. A lot of towns for the charter actually call a special town meeting so that it will be just focused on the charter. We have yet to discuss that. From the beginning, we figured we wouldn't want to do that, it costs more money. It is, taking people and putting them together one more time during the course of the year. And is that something that is going to help us or actually hurt us, because people would be so annoyed that we're taking them away from their families that they're going to say, I don't want to do this. So we need to really take a look at, but you do have the option on deep dive items to have a special meeting at any time. And there is, and I might get the numbers wrong, but it only takes a certain number of people to petition the select board for there to be a special town meeting on any topic. So that's in our current bylaws, it's going to be in our charter. So that is something that can always happen. Yeah.
It's not working.
Okay. Talk loud. You talk
Yeah.
loud.
Oh, well, I talk loud. Oh,
You do
okay.
talk loud.
And you have to keep in mind, for zoning and general bylaw articles, 90 days is when they have to be submitted for town meeting. So you're talking, when we have September 28th, 2026 town meeting, for January town meeting, deadline is then October 28th. That gives you a month for any zoning and bylaw elements to hit that deadline. And so by adding more meetings, you're also already having issues with the timing of staff and boards to really spend a lot of thought and thoroughness in that. And so I think that was another part of what we discussed.
Yes,
too.
exactly. Okay, what else you got?
All right, great.
I'm on.
Okay, I'm on. Last thing was, and I think you talked about this on the last BG
RC.
meeting, the survey results.
Yes.
When can we sink our teeth into those?
Okay, we got the preliminary, and I mean preliminary this afternoon, because our consultant was really kind, because they knew we were having this meeting tonight, and got us, they're just like the high-level percentages. The actual analysis is due on July 3rd. We'll get it on July 3rd.
Can we get not the analysis, but the raw data?
I want to wait until you get the analysis, please.
Fair enough. You're the boss.
Well, not me, us, but yes. Myrna, you still have it.
I remember.
I'm on.
Okay.
This is
Oh, I
Joe.
think in that, keep trying to
Bottom.
Testing?
Yeah.
This is June, January is just 7 months away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of education that has to be done to our town meeting members if we're going to be voting. We have a September town meeting in between.
Yes.
And you know everything else that happens after that. And as I always request, you know, how many town meeting members are attending? How many town meeting members are here tonight? Okay. We have 126, remember that. So there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work, and that's all I'm asking is, you know.
Yeah. So just to let you know that we have requested meetings with every town meeting committee to meet with them separately, so we can have targeted discussions about this project as it relates to what they do. We had general bylaw last night. We had a very great discussion. They asked a lot of questions. They had some clarification. They actually made some points that changed the slide that you saw tonight. So, you know, our intent is to go through all of that. We also have, are requesting to present at board meetings for the elected boards. And we're going to get planning board tomorrow night. And we are working with the school department now about going to their committee to, not that it has a whole lot to do with the schools, but we're all one community and we all affect each other and maybe some ways you don't really know, but this will affect, you know, so this is important to do. Other than that, like other town meetings, you know, the information sessions that are offered up, we will be doing those. I think we will try to seek out people who we know tend to have a lot of questions about change. And we welcome.
BCAT will be showing this.
Oh, thanks, Jack. And BCAT is going to have this on BCAT. So for the people who watch BCAT, this will be there. We're also going to be doing an interview with BCAT about this project. It's obviously on social media. And we are getting questions from the website where people will submit a question to us or a comment, and then we actually talk about that at our meetings. And we've made real changes to our recommendations based on some of that. And some of that, what we've heard, are misunderstandings about how things work. So for example, I'll give you one because it was one that I think is a general misunderstanding, which is about the difference between a town manager and a town administrator. There is no such thing as a town manager form of government and a town administrator form of government. If you look at Mass state law, if you look at the Mass Municipal Association definitions, not there at all. They are interchangeable. You have administrators with a lot of responsibility and accountability. You have managers with no responsibility and accountability. it really is not a thing. And I think for some reason, a lot of people have it in their heads, that's a thing. Oh, if we call somebody a town manager, then we must be a city. No. If we call it a town manager, is it gonna help recruit somebody? Maybe. But we haven't, and actually we haven't voted on that one yet. We will, but we haven't yet. But that's an example of some of the stuff that we really are trying to grapple with. And in terms of educating people, if there's a group or a person that you think would be good for us to sit down and talk to, all you need to do is let us know and we'll do it.
Thank you for your explanation, but I'm concerned about the 126 town meeting members. That's my issue.
Yeah, I
How
am
are we
too.
going to get them together to be enlightened about?
The only way we can force town meeting to get together is to have a town meeting. Right, other than that, we can invite them,
No.
we can call a special town meeting. We have information sessions that the town clerk sends out things to everybody and says, we're gonna have an information session on this night about this topic. And I think I've gone to most of them, and there may be, and Jack, you're there with me,
10, 12.
10 or 12 people there, right? You can't force people to go to these things or pay attention.
It's not a matter of.
But if you have an idea,
But the town meeting has to vote on this.
Yeah, I know.
And that's part of the procedure. That's my concern. That's all. Thank you.
yeah, I share that, and all I can say is, if we get through this, and, everybody, you know somebody who has not been informed, or you think we need to talk to, and you tell us, and we go do this, and we have the information sessions, and we solicit this, we're on BCAT, all our meetings are open, people can come, people have come. They're reported in the Buzz, they're reported in the Beacon, and so we can only do what we can do, and there's a part of me that says that, and I won't say that much.
Do you intend to do that again in September to give an update?
Yeah, the question's about, I don't know this one. Yeah, town meeting, we've done presentations in front of town meeting. We were appointed as a committee in June. We did our first presentation at town meeting in September. We did our next presentation at town meeting in January. We did our next presentation at town meeting in May. And we're gonna do the next presentation in town meeting in September. Now, it may be that we get a little more aggressive, and that's something we haven't talked about, and I don't usually shy away from aggressive, but, and really put it out there, that it's town meeting's job to learn about this. This is not easy. This is not wait till the night of and open the book. This is attend the sessions, go online, read the charter, go online, send a question, invite us to come talk to your group. I don't care what it is, but it's up to them to do that. So when we get to January, and if somebody asks a question that we've never heard before, that's a problem, in my opinion. But hopefully we can avoid that. I'm optimistic. Pollyanna, let's hope that we can make this, let's make an educated, whether they approve or don't, as long as we're doing so from an educated perspective, that's all that matters.
Hello, so I'm new to town meeting, this is my first, May was my first meeting, and
Well,
so-
welcome and thank you.
Thank you, and it is a very serious commitment. I think when people don't show up when they leave early, I don't want to hear the excuses. I frankly don't, because I have 3 children, and I didn't run 7 years ago because I couldn't make the commitment then, and now I can. I think that there should be, on the website, it's very hard to, on the town website, it's very hard to see who has shown up to town meeting, and maybe if it's a little more transparent, or easily clickable, it'll be a little more helpful, because I'm totally in on learning about this. This charter is a big deal, I feel, and town meeting owes it to our constituents to show up and go to these meetings.
Yeah, I agree.
So, if the next meeting, because I'm not on any committees or anything yet, I would definitely be interested in going.
Every Tuesday, second and fourth Tuesday of the month,
Okay.
and the agendas are posted in the Agenda Center online.
Oh yeah, I'm getting the emails.
Okay, good. You're welcome.
Be ready, the rooms move us around.
Yeah, the room, we're bouncing around. The acoustics as Ted will attest, the acoustics in in the annex are absolutely terrible. And I know the town administration's trying to work on it. I don't understand why it's a problem. I mean, look at this. I got a lavalier mic, there's this, we got the TVs, and we're here. So over there, we should be able, maybe we should have a challenge, like the sound challenge or something.
I mean, there's even like lights dropping from the ceiling.
But they
and
don't.
yeah,
They put a
still-
lot of money into redoing the sound in here, because the sound used to be
Right.
terrible.
Yeah, well, whatever, we should learn the lessons here and take them over there. In any event, the sound is terrible, but when we're in the other one, so we're aware of the fact the sound isn't good. So we're trying to make sure the people who don't talk loud sit under the dropped microphones, and we're also asking the people online to say, can't hear you, which is what we do, you know, that's fine.
And also to Jeremy's point as well, oh shoot, I just forgot what I was gonna say. Hold on, give me 1 second.
That's okay.
I was just thinking, like, to Jeremy's point, he said something about, I can't remember right now. Remote meetings.
Accountability.
The accountability, I can't remember, oh my gosh, I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay, don't worry about it. We'll
And
let
today's
somebody
thing
else, and then it'll come right to you.
Yeah.
that you're like
That's
me.
always happens.
30 seconds. The other thing I want to mention to you, that your comment about posting that stuff on the website,
Yeah.
the person in back of you is our new communications officer, Laura.
Who's great.
And guess who runs our website? So you just gave her a to-do for tomorrow.
How's my representative doing?
Mike.
You don't need to bring with it.
Thank you. Hey, first I just wanted to thank the committee for all the hard work they're doing. This is a lot, and it's a huge undertaking, and it's so appreciated, the work you guys are doing, and I think you're gonna make a really fine difference for the town, so thank you very much. Briefly, you may have mentioned this, but I'm not sure. You mentioned the facilities committee. Are you guys taking a deep dive look into all of our committees and what committees are actually meeting and what committees are actually functioning? Because one of the issues we have is filling those committees, and no one's really doing anything. I don't know why to fill them.
Yeah, when it comes to town meeting committees, those are the ones I'm talking about, not the select board appointed ones, but the town meeting ones that the town moderator does. We know that there's no facilities committee. It's listed, it's got a responsibility in the bylaws, but there isn't one. There's a beautification committee that apparently either doesn't exist or hasn't met in years, right? So does that exist? Does it not exist? If it doesn't exist, well, we have an arts committee who's awesome. So maybe that's enough. Maybe that's sufficient. So those are the committees that we're going to recommend, not in the charter, but as our recommendation for the reviews of bylaws, that somebody take a deep dive and look at those committees in terms of the roles. We have committees that are doing things that are way outside of their prescribed role. We have some committees who have responsibilities that they didn't even know they had. And so if they're not going to do them, remove them. Or if they don't want to remove them, then they better start doing them. You know, it's kind of like that kind of thing. So those are the committees that we're really deep diving on. But it's going to be a recommendation that there will be in the transition report, that there will be a follow-up to this project, and which will involve evaluating the town meeting committees. The other one, just mention this briefly before, that most town charter, when you start your first charter, most towns will say in their recommendations that in 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is, that a second charter committee be established to take a look at how are things going. Maybe then there is an appetite to change things that were not changed or when the initial charter was done. So this is not a one and done. This is, let's get a charter, let's make as much progress as we can in communicating to our residents and townspeople what it is we all do, for those of us who are involved, and how to do it, and how to interface with us, and what we're accountable for, and put that all in one place, and then come back and take a look later and see if we got it all. And if we didn't, we'll add it in 5 years, and they're looking for volunteers for that committee. Jack?
Explain if there's to be a change, if there's to be a change in the charter, there was a 1-2 year process in the legislature to do it.
Okay, yeah, so The charter is like a special act, so for those of you, I didn't even notice it. When I got on town meeting, what did I know? I knew nothing. I happened to sit next to somebody in town meeting who was really into zoning and got me suckered into that, and that's when I knew what a bylaw was. But that was the first time I ever even heard of a bylaw. So special act I never heard of. Now I know what a special act is, but one of the things about special act is they're hard to change. So they're not impossible to change, but it's a longer process. So with a special act, town meeting has to vote on it, and then by majority vote, and then it goes to the legislature, not the attorney general like a bylaw, legislature, and then gets signed by the governor, and then it comes back as approved. They can even require a town vote on something if they feel that it's important enough to get a town vote. But most of the special acts that we send through have not required that. They're just like internal how we operate as a town, but it's a process. It is a process.
And the charter also takes time to change.
The charter is considered a special act, so it goes through the same process. Yeah, Russ?
Yeah, just to help clarify for fun, because I didn't know anything either. A special act is a Massachusetts state law that is confined to a geographic area. So when we get a special act about Burlington, it's just about Burlington and what Burlington does. The charter, if it is passed and goes through all the steps, it would eventually go before the legislature, and that's as a special act. If it was adopted, then any changes to that charter in the future would have to go through the same process. The town meeting would have to approve it, it would have to go to the state legislature to be approved. So one of the things, the balance we're trying to strike often is what is important enough to enshrine in the charter, even if it's hard to change, because we want it to be something that's, structural long-term, versus what are the things where flexibility for the town is important so that they can be a little bit more flexible and we don't have to go through quite as large of a process. And that's more what bylaws are about.
Thanks, Russ. Any other questions? Nick?
First off, thank you to the whole committee for all the work that you guys are doing. Knowing the size and scope of this and everything that everyone's talked about already, I'm going to put this as a question, though I know that there's some work that the select board can do here. Have we talked to town administration at all about, quote unquote, clearing the warrant for January so that this is the only thing that town meeting talks about?
I will let you guys work that out.
Yeah, because there's an impact, obviously, to potential major bylaw.
Well, that's the thing. I think that we're far enough out from, the 90-day window, the need to warrant, that, and again, we'll have to probably check with town council, right, to say if we only took up one article for town meeting to review the charter, would we still be in the purview of a standard town meeting? Or are we pushing the limit? And then Jackie just said, do we have a special town meeting within town meeting? So that it's all incorporated in one thing, and we call out time specifically for the charter.
I guess, yeah, and I think the other thing to maybe think about is whether we have kind of a little bit of a shift on that and say, we're gonna have one night that is exclusively charter night. And then all the other stuff, because Jess is right, I mean, gosh, we always are busy at town meeting, right? So it's not like we don't have things to talk about that are important and really, from a timing perspective, important to somebody. So we need to be sensitive to that too. So maybe we say town meeting in September is going to be, right from the get-go, we know it's going to be, January, sorry, gosh.
I don't want that on record.
January, could you roll back the tape on that? January, the first night is going to be exclusively town charter. That's all we're going to talk about. The only request I would make would be, it would be the first night. So that might be it. But again, this is not our call. All we're going to say, we are going to do our absolute best to get everything ready for January. We're going to need a lot of people's support along the way. We're going to need legal counsel. We've already, we gave her a heads up it's coming. She knows it's coming, but we're going to need everybody to kind of cooperate along the way so we can get this thing done. We just finished our communications committee. We had our last meeting on Monday. Next is going to be the report writing committee, which will start up our next subcommittee. I mean, it's going to be boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Say town meeting passes it in January and it goes to vote. Does it go in April for the town-wide election, or do we have another special election?
I'm glad you asked that question. So, not if, but when town meeting approves it in January, then it goes to the legislature. Once the legislature does their thing and the governor signs it, it comes back to us. If along the way anybody wants it to go to the town for an election, it would go to election after it's been approved by the legislature and the governor. Because you don't want to go to special election, have a special election only to find out that the legislature is saying no, or they want to change something, right? Which I don't think they would do, but that's what I was told.
That would take a long time, so.
Okay, Russ?
Can I also just note, if it passes town meeting, and if the charter then goes to the state legislature, then, just like any other bill, the state legislature can modify it as they see fit. They can provide, they can have amendments. So the idea of the vote is to be a ratification after they've done whatever they do, should a vote happen.
Okay. Anything else? This has been awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I think we got so much out of this in terms of ideas, input, suggestions, reaction. Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb now. If I forced you to vote right now, is that no? Can I do that? No, I can't do that because that's a meeting. Never mind. I can't do that.
We don't even know what.
Also, I don't.
She doesn't want to know the answer.
I don't know the answer.
I was going to ask how many people would
We still
support
have,
the charter.
we still
if
have
no-
a long time to go. So
Yes, we do. I'm not gonna do it. Thank you.
haven't even read it.
Yeah.
I know. That was like, one of those spur of the moment
sounds
ad
good,
libs.
I like it, I'll support it.
When is your next committee meeting?
Pardon?
When is your next committee meeting?
Tuesday night, Tuesday, the 22nd.
Yeah, and like Betsy has said as well, it's 23rd. We are, Betsy is making, along with various committee members, significant rounds already, coming to many of boards and committees. So also if you are a fan of watching those, you can also get some great information there. A lot of it will be similar to what you've heard in terms of what have we been doing, what are we up to, honing in on what are some things you as the either elected body or committee should be aware of that might affect you. But that's another way to get it. And just so everyone knows, we did form a subcommittee within this committee, a communications subcommittee. And so we've also been meeting as of late weekly on top of also this. And time before that for a significant period of time to continue to try to get the word out there. This is not something we want to be hidden. This is not something we want people to be like, what the heck is this? By every means possible, without a budget, looking at select board, we have tried to hit up every avenue possible to get the word out between flyers, the sign, social media, emails, website, whatever we can. So if you have other places and other recommendations to get the word out, really, really would love to hear those. So yeah.
Right. Thank you all for taking time out of your evenings to join us tonight. That was really terrific. We really appreciate it. So.